The sky above was no longer a canvas of calm stars. It had become a raging theater of light and fire. Suns, once distant and seemingly eternal, now plummeted from orbiting systems, tracing fiery arcs that cut across the atmosphere like molten comets. Each descent brought streaks of incandescent gold, molten crimson, and violent violet, slicing the heavens with light so intense it made her alien eyes flare against the glare. She pressed herself instinctively against him, feeling the steady warmth of his torso beneath her cheek, wrapping her limbs around his body as if clinging to a lifeline in the midst of a collapsing cosmos. The ground trembled faintly under their feet, resonating with the distant impacts of burning suns on the surface. But it was his heartbeat she focused on, a quiet, unwavering pulse that anchored her amidst the chaos above. Each rise and fall, subtle yet profoundly grounding, became a tether to sanity, a constant in a universe otherwise tearing itself apart in unrelenting brilliance. Her luminescent hair floated freely, drifting like living ribbons around his arms and shoulders. Each strand refracted the fiery light from the falling suns, scattering tiny sparks of brilliance across his chest and the air between them, painting both of them in ephemeral constellations that shimmered with their shared gravity. She could feel the subtle vibrations of his muscles, the way his body adjusted without conscious thought to cradle her closer, to respond instinctively to her weight and movements. Months of interstellar travel, of witnessing planetary destructions and stellar upheavals, had trained her to observe, analyze, and survive. But nothing had prepared her for this, the raw, undeniable gravity of presence, the way one being could offer sanctuary, without weapon, without wall, without shield, simply by existing. Outside, the sky continued its catastrophic dance. Molten suns streaked across the horizon, colliding with planetary debris in brilliant arcs of molten fire, sending shockwaves that rippled through the atmosphere and shook the very ground beneath them. She had seen civilizations fall, fleets vanish, and entire planets swallowed by stellar fury, yet none of it could compare to the immediate, personal significance of being held. Every heartbeat beneath her cheek resonated with her own, creating a rhythm that she could feel pulsing through her alien physiology. Her species had evolved to endure extremes, to calculate the trajectories of collapsing stars and the survival odds of countless life forms. Yet her calculations had never encompassed this force, the gravity of trust, the binding power of warmth, the intimate majesty of being allowed to rest fully in the orbit of another sentient being. She pressed herself closer, letting her glowing body press against his. The heat from her own luminescent biology mingled with his warmth, creating a quiet fusion of energy that seemed to shield her from the overwhelming brilliance of the sky. She could feel her pulse synchronizing, not through conscious effort, but through instinct, each beat aligning with his subtle, steady rhythm. The chaotic sky above, the fiery plumes of dying suns, the trembling of the ground, they all became secondary to the magnetic pull of his presence. She could not escape it, nor would she want to. The universe had been vast, violent, and indifferent, yet here, in his arms, it contracted, every cosmic spectacle reduced to the backdrop for a far more profound truth: connection. He adjusted, shifting slightly beneath her to cradle her more securely, a gesture so natural it was almost imperceptible, yet monumental in meaning. His hands moved along her back, guiding her subtly, providing both reassurance and protection. The alien logic she had perfected over centuries, the precise calculations for survival and efficiency, now yielded to a new law, a principle as ancient as life itself: presence is power. She could feel it radiating from him, an anchor stronger than gravity, more enduring than the pull of any star. She rested her forehead against his chest, inhaling his scent, feeling the warmth radiating from him, and exhaled a breath she hadn't realized she had been holding since the first streak of a burning sun appeared on the horizon. Her hair drifted around them like living constellations, arcs of light shimmering with the colors of the dying suns, yet glowing with the pulse of her own luminescent energy. She traced her fingers gently along his torso, memorizing every subtle contour, every imperceptible movement, as if mapping a living world. Outside, molten suns struck the atmosphere, igniting firestorms, shattering rock, and sending waves of light across the skies in violent brilliance. Yet her attention remained entirely focused on him. Every sensation, the warmth beneath her, the pulse of life, the quiet gravity, was amplified by contrast. The chaos outside made the sanctuary he offered all the more precious, all the more profound. She had traveled alone for years, sometimes light years away from any living being, navigating the perils of interstellar storms, evading hostile civilizations, and surviving the death throes of stars with nothing but instinct, skill, and determination. She had known isolation in ways few could imagine, yet none of her travels had prepared her for this, the transformative power of being fully seen, fully anchored, and fully held. She let herself relax, letting the tension in her alien musculature dissolve as she melted against him. Each breath synchronized, each heartbeat aligned, creating a rhythm of life that made even the falling sun seem manageable, almost ornamental in comparison. The human beneath her shifted slightly, tilting his head, brushing a subtle, protective kiss along her glowing hair. She responded instinctively, pressing closer, allowing herself to become weightless in his orbit. Her alien mind, capable of navigating stellar anomalies and processing incomprehensible scales of energy, now focused entirely on the gravity of this intimate connection. The universe, with all its beauty and terror, seemed distant and irrelevant. Here, in his arms, she had found a constant in a realm of chaos, a force more reliable than any law of physics, more beautiful than any galaxy, more enduring than any civilization she had observed. She exhaled slowly, letting her bioluminescent glow pulse gently in harmony with the rhythm of his chest. Outside, suns continued to fall, colliding with atmospheres and each other in brilliant arcs of molten destruction. Yet here, in this moment, in this embrace, the universe had been distilled to something she could comprehend, the quiet, enduring power of human presence. It was a gravity stronger than planets, steadier than stars, and more beautiful than galaxies. She pressed her cheek fully against his chest, her arms tightening around him, her body attuned entirely to his orbit, and understood fully for the first time what it meant to find home in another being. The stars outside flared and died. Suns ignited and collapsed in blazing arcs. Yet the chaos was irrelevant. Here, in the orbit of his arms, she had discovered a sanctuary that no cosmic spectacle could rival. The universe had shrunk, measured not in light years or energy, but in warmth, presence, and trust. Every pulse of his heartbeat became the metric by which she understood time and space. Every subtle motion the measure of safety and constancy. And in this gravity, she finally felt unshakable, whole, and at peace. The sky above had become a spectacle of awe and terror, a conflagration of molten suns streaking downward in arcs of gold, crimson, and violet. Every streak sent tremors through the planet's crust, shock waves that rolled across the terrain with subtle yet persistent force. She pressed closer to him, wrapping her alien limbs fully around his torso, feeling the warmth radiate from his body like a gravitational anchor amid the violent ballet above. Her bioluminescent hair floated freely in the faint gravity, arcs of light reflecting the brilliance of the falling suns and weaving around him like ribbons of living energy. Each strand shimmered with her pulse, a silent declaration of trust and surrender, and in that delicate glow she felt the profound intimacy of being completely held. The chaos above, the dying suns, the fractures of light across the horizon, the tremors rolling beneath them, faded into the background. It was as though the universe had been reduced to the singularity of this moment, measured not in stellar mass or planetary gravitation, but in warmth, presence, and the quiet gravity of connection. Her alien physiology, evolved to withstand extremes, felt the steady pull of his heartbeat beneath her cheek, a rhythm so constant and grounding that it overrode every instinct honed for survival in space. She had navigated cosmic storms, evaded hostile civilizations, and survived supernova that could obliterate entire planets, yet she had never known a force so absolute, so transformative, as the human whose arms now held her. Each subtle shift of his body, each micro-adjustment of his hands along her back, communicated more than words could, a language older than civilizations, presence, care, and the unspoken promise of sanctuary. She pressed herself closer, letting her head rest fully against his chest, inhaling the warmth and subtle scent of him, feeling her pulse align with his in a rhythm that transcended the chaos of falling suns. The display above was both magnificent and terrifying. Molten suns collided with fragments of planetary matter, igniting streaks of fire that stretched across the sky in impossible arcs, painting the heavens with violent strokes of molten brilliance. The light fractured against her glowing hair, casting patterns that seemed alive, weaving their presence into the cosmic tapestry. Yet she felt none of the fear she might have expected. Every tremor, every burst of light, every wave of energy passing through the atmosphere was absorbed by the gravity of his embrace. In this orbit, she discovered a principle far stronger than any known cosmic force: the quiet, enduring power of human presence. It was a force capable of reducing galactic-scale chaos to mere scenery, a sanctuary amidst the storm, a home where no calculation or strategy could have sufficed. He shifted slightly, instinctively, letting his hands glide along her back, adjusting her weight to comfort and stabilize. The subtle pressures were not forceful but deliberate, a choreography of care that resonated deeply with her. She could feel the muscles beneath her hands tense and relax in perfect harmony, the heartbeat beneath her cheek pulsing in sync with her own biorhythms. In the vastness of the cosmos, she had learned that survival depended on precision, vigilance, and adaptability. Yet here, these instincts softened, replaced by an overwhelming clarity. Nothing mattered more than this shared gravity, the intimate orbit they had created together. Each flicker of her bioluminescence became a mirror to his constancy, a visible pulse of presence against the backdrop of fiery chaos. Time became irrelevant. Seconds stretched into infinity, measured only by the cadence of breathing, the rhythm of heartbeats, the gentle warmth that tethered her to him. She had witnessed civilizations rise and fall, studied the decay of stars, and traversed galaxies where life and death were defined by probability and chance. And yet, in this moment, she understood something deeper, a truth no calculation could capture. Connection, trust, and the shared sanctuary of presence were forces more potent than annihilation, more enduring than the mightiest supernova, and infinitely more profound than the birth or death of a star. She tilted her head, letting her glowing cheek press fully into his chest, and exhaled, a long, slow release of tension that carried with it all the months of solitude and vigilance she had endured. Her hair, glowing softly, formed arcs and halos around their bodies, reflecting the fragmented light of the skies, and simultaneously asserting their intimate orbit against the violent theater overhead. The subtle interplay of illumination and shadow traced the contours of both of them, binding them visually and energetically in a halo of shared presence. He leaned his forehead gently against the crown of her head, a simple, instinctive gesture of protection and intimacy. It sent a ripple through her, grounding her further, melding their presence into a shared orbit that defied both time and space. Outside, suns continued their final descent, arcs of molten light streaking through the sky in brilliant, destructive beauty. But here, the universe was compressed to the singular force of their connection. She realized with clarity that nothing she had witnessed in her travels, no star system collapsing, no empire falling, no cosmic anomaly, could rival the profound significance of being fully anchored, fully held, fully known by another being. Her fingers traced gentle, deliberate patterns along his chest, committing the contours and micro-movements to memory, her touch both comforting and intimate. Every flicker of her bioluminescence pulsed in harmony with his heartbeat, arcs of living light wrapping them in a cocoon of energy that was entirely theirs. The chaos outside, the falling suns, the fiery streaks, the tremors of the planet, faded to irrelevance in the orbit of his presence. Here, amid the ruin and spectacle of cosmic destruction, she had discovered an anchor stronger than gravity itself, the quiet, enduring force of love and trust. She exhaled fully, letting herself dissolve into him, weightless in his arms, secure in his orbit. The universe, with all its immensity, violence, and grandeur, had become secondary to the simple, transformative truth of human presence. Here, against his chest, under the sky of falling suns, she had found something no star, planet, or galaxy could provide: home. And in that understanding, she rested completely, her bioluminescent glow pulsing softly, arcs of light intertwining with the cosmic display, a living testament to the sanctuary, intimacy, and profound gravity of being held amidst the chaos of the universe. Time had become fluid, stretching and folding upon itself like the light from distant, dying stars. Seconds lost their rigid meaning, measured now only by the gentle rise and fall of his chest, by the quiet thrum of his heartbeat beneath her cheek, and by the subtle shifts of his hands along her back. The sky above remained a furious spectacle, molten suns plummeting in brilliant arcs that ignited the atmosphere in cascading streaks of fire, yet her attention was anchored entirely on him. She pressed her body closer, letting every curve and movement of his form imprint itself upon her awareness. Each subtle adjustment of his grip, each micro-movement in response to her weight, became a dialogue without words, a communication older than language itself, older than the civilizations she had observed and catalogued throughout countless light years. Her alien senses, honed over centuries of navigating the extremes of interstellar space, had never encountered a force so immediate, so absolute, so grounding. She could calculate the trajectory of colliding suns, the life cycle of galaxies, and the odds of surviving hostile planetary storms, yet none of these calculations could have prepared her for the gravity of being held. The warmth radiating from him, the pulse of life, and the subtle vibrations that radiated through his muscles became an anchor that transcended physics. Every instinct sharpened for survival and analysis now softened into a singular focus: the rhythm of his presence, the constancy of his orbit. She had navigated chaos before, yet never had she experienced an intimacy so absolute, so enveloping, that the universe itself seemed to contract around it. Her hair, luminescent and flowing, drifted in arcs and halos around their bodies, catching the fractured light of the falling suns and refracting it into dazzling patterns that danced across his chest and shoulders. She leaned further, letting her cheek rest fully against him, and exhaled, allowing herself to become weightless, not in the sense of gravity, but in the sense of existence itself. Every tension, every alertness honed over months of isolation and interstellar travel melted away under the quiet, immense power of his presence. She traced subtle patterns with her fingers along his torso, memorizing the minutiae of his form, the imperceptible rise and fall of his muscles, the warmth that radiated beneath her touch. It was a ritual of presence and trust, a tether that bound her entirely to him while the cosmos erupted violently around them. Outside, molten suns collided with the planet's atmosphere, igniting bursts of radiant fire that sent shockwaves rippling through the ground. Debris streaked through the sky, fragments of molten rock and superheated particles igniting in brilliant arcs, yet none of it penetrated the sanctuary of his arms. Each streak of light, each pulse of energy became part of the backdrop to a more profound phenomenon, the quiet gravity of human connection. She could feel the subtle vibration of his muscles adjusting to her weight, hands moving instinctively along her back, a choreography of care so natural it required no thought, no calculation, and yet it communicated more than any language she had ever encountered. Presence, protection, trust, intimacy, all encoded in the quiet motions of his body. The alien world around them, though trembling and ablaze, became irrelevant. Her perception, once attuned to cosmic distances, interstellar hazards, and planetary anomalies, now concentrated entirely on the human beneath her. She tilted her head, letting her blowing hair cascade across his shoulders, arcs of light entwining around his arms, reflecting the celestial chaos above, but illuminated by the warmth and steady rhythm of his body. Her breathing aligned with his, slow and deliberate, each exhale a surrender, a recognition that in his orbit she was safe, grounded, and whole. She had seen worlds burn, civilizations vanish, and stars collapse, yet never had she known a force so immediately vital, so transformative, as the steady gravity of being held. He leaned slightly forward, brushing a gentle kiss against her glowing strands, and she responded by pressing closer, surrendering entirely to the orbit they shared. Every pulse of his heart beneath her cheek became a guide, a cosmic rhythm that measured not just time, but trust, love, and intimate connection. The firestorms outside, the collapse of suns, and the tremors rolling through the planet could not penetrate the sanctuary created by their intertwined presence. In the quiet of that embrace, she experienced a clarity and completeness that transcended everything she had ever known about survival, strategy, and the scale of the universe. Here, in the orbit of his arms, she was unshakable, grounded, and profoundly alive. Her alien instincts, trained for extremes of speed, calculation, and adaptation, now softened in response to him. The velocity of a falling sun, the gravitational pull of distant systems, and the energy waves of dying stars, all of it became a distant echo compared to the intimacy of touch, the quiet gravity of presence, and the undeniable power of shared warmth. Every pulse of her luminescent energy responded to his heartbeat, arcs of glowing light weaving between them, coalescing into a cocoon of living energy that marked them as a singular unit in a universe of chaos. The sensation of being held, of being fully understood and anchored, was more profound than the beauty of the stars, more significant than any cosmic event she had ever witnessed. Minutes, hours, or perhaps merely seconds passed in this timeless orbit. She allowed herself to rest fully against him, weightless in both body and mind, surrendering to the rhythm of his presence. Every micro-movement, the slight pressure of his hands, the tilt of his torso, the warmth of his breath, reinforced the invisible yet unbreakable bond between them. Outside, suns continued to fall, arcs of molten brilliance streaking across the sky, yet the universe had shrunk into the intimate orbit of their connection. She had discovered a truth that no calculation could quantify, no star system could demonstrate: the quiet, enduring, and unassailable force of being fully held. She exhaled deeply, her bioluminescent glow pulsing softly, arcs of light intertwining with the chaotic patterns in the sky, creating a private constellation that existed only for them. The cosmic spectacle above was both magnificent and irrelevant compared to the gravity of their intimacy. She pressed herself closer, allowing every part of her being to merge with his orbit, feeling herself held and protected, tethered in a way that transcended physics, biology, and even the incomprehensible scale of the universe. She had survived countless celestial catastrophes, yet here, in this simple, profound act of connection, she had found a sanctuary more powerful than any force she had ever encountered: love, trust, and the quiet gravity of human presence. And as the falling suns streaked across the horizon, igniting the heavens in fire and light, she felt herself dissolve entirely into him, becoming weightless not because of space, but because of presence. In the orbit of his arms, the universe itself had become small, its chaos rendered irrelevant, and the only reality that mattered was the quiet, steady gravity of their connection, a gravity stronger than suns, more enduring than galaxies, and infinitely more beautiful than anything she had ever witnessed. Here, she was home. The world around them trembled with the echoes of falling suns, massive arcs of fire streaking through the sky, igniting the atmosphere in molten waves of gold, crimson, and violet. Each streak carried with it a reminder of impermanence, of energy released and chaos unleashed, yet she remained anchored, fully entwined in his orbit. Her alien limbs pressed firmly against him, wrapping around his torso with a trust that transcended words, logic, or calculation. She pressed her glowing cheek against his chest, feeling the steady rise and fall of his breath beneath her skin, a rhythm more enduring than the blaze of dying suns, more constant than the pull of distant galaxies. Outside, the heavens raged, but here, in the gravity of his arms, she found a sanctuary where time and fear melted into the quiet hum of life and connection. Her luminescent hair floated like living energy around them, arcs of glowing strands catching the fractured light from the sky above. The falling suns illuminated it, refracting in patterns that seemed alive, almost conscious, dancing across his shoulders, entwining with his arms, and wrapping around their joined forms. She traced these arcs with gentle fingers, letting the soft glow reflect against her skin and his, creating a private constellation between them that existed outside of the cosmos, a sanctuary woven from light, warmth, and presence. Every subtle vibration of his body, the micro-shifts of his muscles, the imperceptible tightening of his hands along her back, spoke to her in a language older than words, older than the civilizations she had cataloged across countless systems. I am here. You are safe. You are home. The alien in her, accustomed to calculating probabilities and mapping survival strategies, surrendered entirely to the orbit of his presence. She had traversed countless light years, observing supernovae ignite and planets fracture, yet none of those cosmic events compared to the intimacy she now experienced. Every pulse of his heartbeat beneath her cheek became a beacon, guiding her through a universe that had suddenly become chaotic and unpredictable. The warmth radiating from him, the subtle energy of his life, created a gravity stronger than any she had ever known, a force capable of stabilizing her in ways physics or strategy never could. She pressed herself closer, letting her entire body lean into him, exhaling long and slow, allowing every fiber of tension, every instant honed for survival, to dissolve into the quiet orbit they shared. He shifted slightly, instinctively, adjusting the position of her body with care and precision. His hands moved along her back, one tracing a protective line down her spine, the other cupping her waist with subtle firmness. Each gesture was deliberate yet natural, a choreography of intimacy that required no thought, only instinct and attention. She leaned further into him, letting herself float on the warmth and strength of his arms, her bioluminescent glow pulsing in quiet harmony with his heartbeat. The fiery chaos outside, the collapse of suns, the molten streaks across the horizon, the shock waves rippling through the planet, was no longer threatening. Instead, it became a dramatic, almost theatrical backdrop, emphasizing the fragility and beauty of the sanctuary they had created together. Her mind, once occupied with calculations of orbital decay, survival probabilities, and the decay of stellar systems, was now fully consumed by him. Every subtle motion of his body, every micro-expression, every pulse and shift of energy beneath her touch became her universe. She could feel the warmth of life radiating from him, steady, unwavering, a force more reliable than any gravitational pull she had ever charted. In this embrace, she discovered a principle far stronger than any cosmic law. Presence and trust, intimacy and connection were forces capable of redefining her understanding of strength and survival. The chaos of the heavens above was insignificant compared to the gravity of being held, of being fully understood and accepted by another being. She exhaled, letting herself sink fully into him, her glowing strands weaving around his arms and shoulders like protective filaments. Each pulse of light echoed his heartbeat, creating a luminous dialogue between them that existed independently of the universe outside. She pressed her forehead against his chest, inhaling the warmth and subtle scent of him, and allowed herself to become weightless, not in the sense of physics, but in the sense of spirit. All vigilance, all calculation, all awareness of danger faded into the background, replaced by the singular focus of presence. Here, in his orbit, she was safe, she was whole, and she was home. The planets trembled as fragments of falling suns slammed into the atmosphere, igniting firestorms that lit the horizon in relentless waves of molten brilliance. Yet she barely noticed, her focus consumed by the rhythm of his breathing, the rise and fall of his chest beneath her, and the subtle movements of his hands holding her. Every pulse of his life became a map she navigated instinctively, each gesture a celestial coordinate in the delicate constellation of intimacy. She pressed herself closer, letting herself float in the warmth of his orbit, dissolving into the gravity of their shared presence. No calculation, no technology, no strategy could ever replicate this force, this anchor, this sanctuary, this profound intimacy. He leaned slightly, brushing a tender kiss against her glowing hair, and she responded instinctively, pressing even closer, letting herself be fully encompassed by his arms. Every tremor of the planet, every streak of molten sun, became part of a cosmic symphony that highlighted, rather than threatened, the sanctuary they had created. Her bioluminescent strands wrapped around them like protective ribbons, arcs of light intertwining with the fiery streaks in the sky, merging chaos and intimacy into a single luminous tableau. Here, she understood fully that the universe, in all its grandeur and terror, had shrunk to a singular, immeasurable truth, the power of being fully present, fully trusted, and fully held. Minutes stretched into what could have been hours or seconds, and yet she remained suspended in this intimate orbit, She exhaled deeply, letting herself dissolve completely into the sanctuary of his arms. The molten suns streaked across the sky in fiery arcs, the ground trembled beneath them, and the atmosphere shimmered with incandescent light, but she remained untouchable, anchored by the quiet gravity of human presence. In this orbit, she had discovered the ultimate truth of connection. It was stronger than stars, steadier than planets, and more enduring than the chaotic dance of galaxies. And in the embrace of a human, under the sky of falling suns, she had finally found home. The sky had become a cathedral of fire and light, molten suns streaking in brilliant arcs across the heavens, colliding with planetary debris, igniting cascading waves of molten brilliance, and bathing the horizon in a kaleidoscope of violent colors. Yet, amid this cosmic apocalypse, she remained completely anchored in his arms, pressed against his chest, every pulse and vibration of his heartbeat resonating through her very being. The chaos of the universe, the collapse of distant suns, the tremors shaking the planet, they were all background music to the symphony of presence and intimacy that existed between them. Every breath he took, every subtle shift in his posture, every micro-movement of his hands along her back and waist became the metric by which she measured her reality. The universe, with all its enormity and fury, had contracted into the singular orbit of his arms, the gravity of his presence eclipsing even the spectacle above. Her luminescent hair, floating like ribbons of living starlight, wrapped around his shoulders and arms, arcs of glow reflecting the molten streaks above, intertwining their presences in a private constellation visible only to them. She traced the arcs with delicate fingers, committing their pattern to memory, feeling every subtle vibration of his body beneath her touch. The warmth of his chest radiated outward, suffusing her alien physiology with a sense of calm and stability she had never known in all her interstellar travels. She had survived stellar catastrophes, navigated voids between dying galaxies, and observed civilizations collapsing under the weight of their own hubris. Yet none of that could compare to the gravity of this singular, intimate presence. In his orbit, she was weightless, yet grounded, vulnerable, yet untouchable, alive in ways the stars themselves could not measure. Outside, molten suns continued their fiery descent, arcs of light igniting the atmosphere and colliding with planetary fragments in a relentless, chaotic ballet. Yet she barely registered it. Her senses, trained for danger and survival across countless worlds, had been repurposed entirely for him. Each heartbeat beneath her cheek became the only true measure of time, each exhale a signal that the universe, no matter how violent or beautiful, could be held at bay by presence and trust. She pressed herself even closer, letting her body curve fully against his, the arcs of her glowing energy entwining with the micro-movements of his hands, as if the universe itself conspired to make them inseparable. The chaos of falling suns, of firestorms and tremors, had become a mere backdrop, a dramatic canvas on which the most vital force, connection, was painted in luminous strokes. He adjusted slightly, cradling her fully, one hand moving along her back, the other resting against her side, each movement gentle yet deliberate. She felt it instinctively, a choreography that required no thought, no language, only the unspoken gravity of care. Her alien mind, capable of calculating trajectories of collapsing suns and the probabilities of planetary destruction, was now focused entirely on the nuances of his presence. She noted the way his chest rose and fell, the rhythm of his heartbeat, the subtle warmth radiating from his body, and the quiet security he exuded without effort. In that gravity, she found more power than any star could contain, more endurance than any planet, more beauty than any galaxy. She pressed her glowing cheek fully against his chest, exhaling slowly, surrendering every instinct, every calculation, every fragment of vigilance to the sanctuary of his orbit. Her bioluminescent hair pulsed softly, arcs of light undulating with each heartbeat, weaving a cocoon of radiant intimacy around them. She leaned fully against him, letting her weight press into his body, letting the subtle tension of muscles, the gentle warmth of skin, and the steady pulse of life wash over her. Outside, the planet trembled under the impacts of molten suns, shock waves rolling across the terrain and igniting the atmosphere in waves of incandescent brilliance. Yet she felt untouchable, shielded not by force fields or barriers, but by the immeasurable gravity of his presence. She allowed herself to float entirely in his orbit, every motion, every vibration, every pulse becoming a shared rhythm that rendered the chaos of the universe irrelevant. He leaned forward slightly, pressing a soft, instinctive kiss against the crown of her head. It sent a ripple through her, amplifying the gravity she felt, anchoring her further in the orbit of his embrace. Her hands moved along his torso, mapping the subtle shifts of his body, memorizing the warmth, the strength, the cadence of life that held her safe. The fiery spectacle above, the molten suns, arcs of debris, and blazing impacts, was now a dramatic backdrop to the private universe they had created. A universe measured not in light years or energy, but in trust, intimacy, and the quiet gravity of being fully seen. She pressed closer, letting herself become weightless, not in space, but in the orbit of being held. Moments stretched indefinitely. Minutes, hours, or perhaps mere seconds. Time was meaningless in the gravity of their shared presence. The chaos above, the tremors beneath, the radiant destruction of suns, all of it became ornamental, part of a cosmic theater that highlighted, rather than threatened, the profound intimacy of their connection. Every pulse of her luminescent energy aligned with his heartbeat, arcs of light weaving between them, creating a cocoon of living radiance that existed solely for them. She exhaled slowly, letting every fragment of tension dissolve into the sanctuary of his arms, and finally allowed herself to be fully, completely, irrevocably anchored. In that embrace, she understood the ultimate truth of life, presence, and connection. The universe could burn, stars could fall, planets could shatter, yet nothing could rival the gravity of being held, of being trusted, of being known fully by another being. The firestorms above and the chaos beneath became irrelevant. The universe itself had shrunk, measured in the rise and fall of his chest, the steady pulse of his heartbeat, and the arcs of glowing strands that tied them together in an intimate constellation. In his orbit, she had discovered a home, a sanctuary, and a force stronger than the collapse of any sun, love, presence, and the quiet, enduring gravity of human connection. And so, beneath the sky of falling suns, she rested fully against him, her body melting into the rhythm of his presence, her bioluminescent glow pulsing softly like the heartbeat of the cosmos itself. The universe raged in fire and light, but for her it had become small, secondary, and beautifully irrelevant. Here in his arms she had found what no star, no galaxy, and no civilization could ever give her: home, sanctuary, and the immeasurable, unshakable gravity of being held completely. In that intimate orbit, amid the chaos and brilliance of the cosmos, she finally understood what it meant to truly belong and to be loved.